Where I see the biggest aha moments and the biggest insights for those people asking those types of questions is when we go back to grade 6 and remember that we learned how to make a baby and how, the next week we perhaps learned how not to make a baby.
Mhm.
And that was the end of our health education in the reproductive area. And so if I can do a quick catch up and show the members of my community the roles and responsibilities of our hormones when cycles are regular, it puts them in the driver's seat.
Electricast. Welcome to Season 4 of Transforming 45. I'm your host, Lisa Boat, and this season we're stepping fully into our power. The heat, the hormones, the heartbreak, the healing. This is midlife, raw and redefined. Each episode, you'll hear stories of humans who are rewriting the rules, reclaiming their bodies, their desires, their voices. This is where we stop shrinking, start shining, and remember who the hell we are. Because midlife isn't a crisis, it's an awakening. Let's get transforming 45. Hello, and welcome to this week's episode of Transforming 45. This week, I am really happy to have a person who has changed the conversation around women's health in Canada and far beyond. Shirley Weir, the founder of Menopause Chicks, has made it her mission to ensure that every woman has access to clear, compassionate, evidence-informed support during perimenopause, menopause, and midlife. Shirley has built a community that empowers women to ask better questions, advocate for their bodies, and feel confident stepping into this next chapter with clarity instead of confusion. She brings heart, wisdom, and a refreshingly honest voice to a space that desperately needs it. Shirley, welcome to the show. I'm so glad you're here today.
Wow. Thank you, Lisa.
All right, so let's start from the beginning. So, who are you, and how did life introduce you to this version?
Such a good question. Well, my name is Shirley Weir, and I am the founder of Menopause Chicks. I'm 58. I'll be 59 in a couple of months. I reached menopause when I was 49 years old, and I've been doing this work for 13 years. This version of myself, oh, first of all, I can't remember being 45. Wait a second. Yeah, okay. Okay, it's there. It's still
I
percolating in
barely
the
remember it
background.
anymore either. I hear you.
But this version of myself, I would say, is definitely um, a 180 from the person, the girl, the 20 something, even the 30 something who grew up fascinated with media and marketing. And that's where I started my career. And it's so interesting now how much I lean back into those early formative thoughts that I received in 70s, 1980s television. I'm a lifelong lover of magazines and just how that set me on a path that then, I know we're going to talk about it, but like definitely shifted when I changed vocations at age 50.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. I'm so glad you brought up the media that we were the media we were marinated in.
Yeah, good phrase. I love that.
Yeah, because my husband and I have just started rewatching Beverly Hills 90210 from the beginning, and we are in the very first season. And I am having so many moments of we were exposed to the best of things and the worst of things at the same time. And I
Yeah.
think that is what makes us such an interesting cohort.
Yes.
Because there are these moments, like in the very first episode, when the Walshes have picture it, it's
I got
1990.
it. I got it.
We Walshes have just moved to California. And Brenda is sitting at the kitchen table and she says to her mom, "Mom, how many calories are in a slice of kiwi?" And Carol immediately knows, Cindy, her character's name, it goes, there's 12 calories per slice. And your face is exactly what I did in the moment when I saw that,
Yeah.
because it was this deep realization of these are the waters we have been swimming in our whole lives. And at the same time, while there was that, there also were some really incredible lessons around hard conversations and being really real about what was happening in teenagers' lives and not being afraid to approach it from really truthful lenses. So I'm interested in hearing your thoughts around this, like best of times, worst of times, and how that's resulted in what I think this movement we're seeing now.
Yeah, I'm not even quite sure I have a fully formed
Yeah.
comment on this movement that we're seeing now. I'm an optimist, and so I like to think of, and I'm sure you're referring to all the messaging that we're getting around menopause, some of it good, some of it not so good. So the best and the worst of times is right where we are right now. It's such a crossroads. But I do like to think of it as a tsunami, and if we're in the wave right now, it is going to level itself out. I hope that that's for good. And I hope that, my daughter benefits from that. She's 22. I think she's already benefited from, a lot of really quality education, and she's applying that to her life. But for her and her peers, I hope that we can see that leveling out.
It's an interesting point, and thinking of it as a tsunami, right? That in the conversations I've been having with people, I got a text from a client the other day who said, like a few months ago, I feel like nobody was talking about this. And now I feel like it's everywhere. And I don't know what the best sources of information are. Like she was asking GLP-1 questions, like
Right.
everything just keeps getting bigger and more complicated. And going back to that media environment that we were in, that was the best of times and worst of times, I think it makes us, I talk about this a lot. I'm sure you do as well. Like, this is the work of women of our generation.
Yes,
Yes. We're
definitely.
doing this work. And I think because we lived in this time of being marinated in these really toxic ideas about what femininity and body was, but at the same time being marinated in pushing back against the system and asking critical questions. Yeah.
Yeah. So I have a BA in communication studies, and I was the first cohort to graduate in communication studies from my university, Wilfrid Laurier.
I went to Waterloo.
Did you?
I
Cool.
did.
So we're neighbors,
We were.
probably a few years apart. Anyway, just recently, I went back and looked up the communication studies program that I graduated from in 1988 to see if critical thinking and statistics were two of the required courses, because in order for me to graduate, I had to take both of those courses. Now, when I was 20 and 21, those were not my favorite courses in university. I loved the one that I took, like the psychology of television, and I got to do an analysis on family ties and, like leaned into all the creativity that I possibly could. Now, Lisa, every single day, every single minute, every single post that I open in the Menopause Chicks community takes me back to critical thinking and statistics analysis.
Yeah, absolutely. And it is, I know it's fascinating. So, my degree is in therapeutic recreation,
Okay.
which also takes me because what I know now that I didn't know in 1996 was that that was a degree in how to create sustainable change. Yeah. It was a flow theory was one of the major theories we had, but also statistical analysis, what actually works, what doesn't work, building internal motivation, because that's really the only thing that can create sustainable change. And so I also have been fascinated by how
Wow.
that work is playing out in what I am doing now and
I
was,
am too.
yeah,
Can I interview you now?
yeah, sure. Please do. We'll hand the mic back and forth.
Well, punchline to the when I went back to see it, those two courses are no longer required to get a degree in communication studies, just so you know. So I think that if we fast forward to today, it really takes us to this place of, yes, we're at a crossroads. Yes, we have a tsunami of information from multiple sources. How does your friend or your client who reached out to you sort through all the different layers of messaging? And and do it without applying, like, does anybody understand even what the term critical thinking means
Yeah.
today in this context?
And it's so important. And my
And
life
by the
was,
way, I don't think I do either. Like, I'm practicing it, but I'm
yeah. I think
not
you
saying I
probably,
have all the answers.
no, but I think you probably do have the habit of mind, because I
Mm.
do think critical thinking was a big part of what we were exposed to. And before I got into this work, I was an educator. I was an educator for 20 years. Yeah, yes, yes, and
Yes, and.
it also almost destroyed me by the end.
Mhm.
And part of that was this move away from critical thinking. And I was in a community of other brilliant educators. I'm not saying I was the only one. We were really trying to focus on this, on creating communities where kids used their critical thinking skills, because it's the most important thing we can possibly do in this juncture of time.
Yes, and
Yeah.
that's what I'm trying to do with adults. It's like I'm not telling you what to do, but I really hope that I can shorten the distance between 2 points or highlight some tools that will help you decide what's right for you.
So let's roll back a little bit to what was the precipitating event for you that created this shift in your professional world, in moving from media and what you were doing into what you're doing now?
Yeah, so I never intended for Menopause Chicks to take over my life in the way that it did. I thought 13 years ago, everyone was blogging. And I thought, well, I could write a blog off the end of my desk, and that would be that. And of course, my own personal experiences of being 39, 41, 45, dealing with sleep deprivation, brain fog, whether that was from hormones or from the sleep deprivation itself, raging on my kids and realizing that I had not grown up to be the mother that I had intended for myself. Those were kind of the things that brought me to wait a second, I have to do something about this. But it took me down a path that was probably inaccurate. And that was, I really didn't want to invest any time in learning. I was like, if I can blame perimenopause on this, let's get to it. Let's find the thing, right? And then I'll get back to my regularly scheduled life. Yeah, that led me to being really disappointed with the initial conversation I had with my doctor, and then of course at the same time I just had the audacity to start this blog or this website, and I got such amazing feedback. I got amazing feedback from my peers, but also from media and community online too, because it was really novel then. Like, it was a really unique conversation to crack open in 2012. Then I have some family stories that I bring with me to this. I've been sharing those as I've been speaking this past year, one of which is my sister, who is 10 years older than I am. And she reached menopause when she was 36. So while I didn't know too much about that before her journey started, I really got to be a witness to someone in the early 90s at 36 learning how to become their own best health advocate. And I use that phrase a lot because she literally had to go door to door knocking and talking to health professionals so that she could choose the journey that's right for her. And very grateful to say that we're looking forward to celebrating her 70th birthday next year. She's healthy, she's active, living a full life.
Yeah, and I'm so glad to hear that, because there are so many other stories.
Yeah, there are.
Yeah, where women didn't get the care that they needed. And what I wanted to go back to was the part where you talked about, okay, well, I'm going to deal with this thing, and then I'm just going to go back to how things were. Right? Because I think that is a really sticky point for people, because, my story is similar in that I was teaching. It was COVID. The last year of my career, I taught grade 6 online, which nearly destroyed me. My kids were in their late teen years. There were a lot of shifts that were happening. And what I know now that I didn't know at the time was that perimenopause absolutely was playing a role. but I didn't know it because I didn't know anything about it at the time. But there's this feeling of I just need to find the one thing I can do that will bring me back to where I was before. And I really think the conversation around it's not about going back to who you were before, it's welcoming the new version.
And meeting the person that you are in the mirror, which I was unwilling to do initially. So hormones are going to fluctuate and they're going to decline. I wasn't at the time willing to hold up a mirror and say, how's your stress level? When was the last time you walked in green space? You say you like eating well, but are you really eating well? How's your sleep? Lisa, I woke up at 3 o'clock in the morning every day, worked for 4 hours before my children woke up, and called myself gifted. That's how, like, I can't even believe that I'm saying that, admitting those things now, but I literally sat here and thought, I'm so gifted. I can do all this and
Yes.
all of that. And I did that until I hit a wall. And then I pressed the gas pedal and drove right through the wall. But did I say any of that to my physician? You know, this lovely woman who delivered both my babies, and I thought it was gonna just like throw me a magic wand. I didn't. I went in and I said, at the tail end of an appointment, I think I might be experiencing the first signs of menopause. And she dismissed me, rightfully so. She looked at my chart, said, you're 41, you're too young. She didn't do anything wrong that day.
Yeah, because she just didn't know.
Well, maybe she knew, but I wasn't owning my health.
Okay, got it.
I
Right.
wasn't meeting her or showing up as somebody who was really being honest.
Yes. Yeah. That also is a real crossroads, right? Because when we go in to talk to our healthcare providers, I think there's a lot of anxiety that we're holding around
So
so many
much,
things, right?
so much.
What can I actually admit to? What am I going to feel judged about? And then holding back so much doesn't allow our healthcare providers to see the full picture. And I will say, like, one of the things I'm most grateful to my doctor at the time, because I took a 6-week leave, and during that time, as soon as I left and I was at home, I was happy. Like, all of the weight lifted off my shoulders. I still had some symptoms I was dealing with, like, what I know now is I had frozen shoulder. I didn't know that at
Hmm.
the time. Like, there are all these things. But all of the extreme anxiety and panic attacks I was having went away. So we had that conversation, and she said, "Well, Lisa, the trick is with that, I can't diagnose a toxic workplace, so you're gonna have to make some hard choices. I can't medicate you for a toxic workplace." And so she held the mirror up for me, which I am forever grateful for.
Yeah. Wow. And it's so layered. I'm sure that everyone listening to this like has something that they can fill in the blank with. Toxic workplace, caring for aging parents, caring for someone with dementia, caring for family, doing all the thing. Oh, by the way, every mortgage in this country continent relies on two incomes right now. So there's so many factors that we can't pull apart in a 10-minute appointment. No.
Absolutely. Yeah. And so knowing that there are these communities that are available and supportive, what are some of the trends that you're really noticing in the community that women are looking for support around?
Well, I mean, the questions that I get the most will usually come under an umbrella called menopause hormone therapy, which is the first line approved evidence-based treatment that is applicable to almost all of us at some point in our life. And for some of us, maybe longer stretches because it's definitely an individualized protocol. But where I see the biggest aha moments and the biggest insights for those people asking those types of questions is when we go back to grade 6 and remember that we learned how to make a baby and how, the next week we perhaps learned how not to make a baby. And that was the end of our health education in the reproductive area. And so if I can do a quick catch up and show the members of my community the roles and responsibilities of our hormones when cycles are regular, it puts them in the driver's seat to make the best decisions for themselves when cycles are no longer regular. It also helps all of us pick apart or discern what you and I were just talking about. Is this related to a decline in progesterone, or is this related to a toxic workplace? Is this related to fluctuating estrogen, or is this related to the fact that I'm iron deficient or I have a sleep disorder? Because putting everything into a menopause bucket is not getting us anywhere, right? It's just leading to more confusion and, in some cases, to more lack of decisions. And one of the biggest things I have to remind folks about is that making an informed decision is, like, obviously the ultimate. Choosing not to make a decision could be more risky than making the wrong one and changing your mind in 3 weeks or 3 months.
Thank you for framing it in that way, because I do think at this point people are getting drowned by the menopause
Some
ocean.
are. Some
Yeah.
are. Yeah,
Yeah. And are feeling really overwhelmed by what is menopause? Like what am I experiencing that is that? What is it that I am experiencing that parts of myself coming back to the surface that maybe I have abandoned for a long time and they're coming back into play. And so that's why I think these conversations are so important, because one of the things I'm worried about in the menopause space is that hormone therapy is taking up all of the oxygen in the room, and it's
it does take up
essential.
a lot.
Yeah, and I'm not saying it's not important. It absolutely is. We need to advocate for continued research. But we do actually know a lot now. There's
We do.
enough there's enough to make really good, well supported by evidence decisions
Yes,
about what is best for our health. And I think the piece of the conversation that we now are missing is all of the identity parts and the soul and heart level work of body is transforming, and so are so many other things in our lives at the same time. And we have to look at that whole picture to really determine what is best for us at this time.
for sure. For sure. I mean, some of the things that come to mind when you talk about that are, are we waiting for a permission slip? Are we waiting for some external force to motivate us to say to a partner, a child, a boss, a doctor, I'm sorry, but that doesn't sound like it will work for me. That's not aligned with who I am and sort of who am I? It kind of goes back to children who grew up on 80s television and yeah, we don't do that around here, or whatever the culture that you're used to. So I totally agree. And somewhere in between the menopause hormone therapy conversation and the elements of life and personal choice and values, there's another bucket, and often it gets merged in with the menopause bucket. And so I spend a lot of time pulling those things apart. So what do I mean? Well, we were never taught to actually ask the question, what's the root cause? So if you're not sleeping, right? 1 in 11 Canadians live with insomnia, but 70% of my community, women aged 45 to 64, meet the criteria for insomnia. Is all of that related to hormones? A percentage is. Lots of individuals can show us the evidence and say, they've um, chosen progesterone therapy and it supports their sleep. But how much of that insomnia is related to other root causes? And if we're not curious, we end up living a life that takes us either in a different direction or ends us, maybe in a situation with a chronic health condition, for example, that we didn't know we were signing up for.
This is critical in the menopause hormone therapy conversation when people say, "Oh, I tried it and it didn't work."
Right. Yeah.
Right? It's not necessarily that it didn't work, it's that we're not getting to the root cause, right? So when we think about sleep in particular, if I have someone who is saying to me, "I'm taking progesterone, but I still wake up at 3 a.m. every morning."
Yeah.
What do we know about a 3 a.m. wake up? We know that that is cortisol cycle,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So progesterone can be supporting that, but until we really get to what is it that is spiking your stress cycle in the day that isn't allowing the stress cycle to close, that 3 a.m. wake up is going to keep happening no matter what you take.
Yeah. And that's why the word and is so imperative to all of
Yes,
these conversations because there's always an
always. And
and.
I also think this is a really great way to enter into the conversation about menopause in the workplace.
Sure.
Because we know in Canadian data and we know the US data is very similar at this point that 1 in 10 women are leaving the workforce at the peak of their career because of unsupported menopause and perimenopause symptoms.
Is it? Are they?
The Menopause Foundation of Canada tells us
Yeah,
that.
I know. I mean, we don't have a ton of evidence, and I'm very familiar with the report you're referring to, and I appreciate it because it's the first of its kind, and it really helps to shine a light on this. But I know the original question was, tell me about your menopause symptoms or like something to that effect. We could go out on the street right now, put a microphone into everyone's face, and we'd get a different answer for what menopause symptoms actually mean. So, yeah, I struggle with that all the time. I do a lot of education in the workplace, which I think the workplace is such an amazing classroom for health education, especially for all ages, all genders, all levels of an organization. Absolutely amazing. And if menopause is what opens up that door or that floodgate, I'm here for it. But we might also want to begin with like a session on sleep or stress management or how to advocate for yourself in a healthcare system that wasn't designed for you or and. So yeah. And I also really worry about menopause in the workplace. And don't get me wrong, I absolutely love doing it, but I'm worried about the folks that don't come to the sessions and what their interpretation is of women are costing our company. Women in these roles are affecting our bottom line, and they could be making, different interpretations or discernment without actually having the goods, the real information in their hands or their heads.
Yeah, I think that's a really important point. And going back to the menopause of it all, I think what it is it highlights because menopause, perimenopause is an energy extensive process, right, for our bodies.
That's a good line.
Yeah. Comes out of my education background. We talk about energy expensive things all the time, but it is incredibly energy expensive. And so all of the things that you were managing before or that you were putting up with before, you suddenly don't have the capacity to do that anymore. And so I think you're right in that it is not just menopause, right? And we know that we lose women at various points throughout the cycle. This one happens to be significant. I certainly see if I think about my own experience, there were lots of things along my career that when I was younger, I had more capacity to think, I am going to be able to change this,
Right.
right? And so, but then when I was 45 and felt like actually I had gone backward, it was that emotional boulder really that hit me. And because my energy stores were depleted, I couldn't do it anymore. And so, and I wonder if that is a lot of what women are facing and are choosing to make these decisions because we have poured ourselves and our identity into making change that maybe we didn't see.
Yeah. Yeah. Wow. That's a lot. It's a
Right.
lot for all of us to sit with. And as you were speaking, the term caregiving popped up in my head. And I was thinking back to the story I shared with you in my 40s. My aging mother was living with us at the time, showing signs of dementia. I didn't even like the word caregiver wasn't even on my radar. There were no campaigns for caregiving. There was no research. It was just something that you do because she's your mom, right? So There's so many of those types of roles. The
It's
people that organize the potluck, they just do it because you just do it, and then you get all of these roles in our culture and in our society that we come to expect and or take for granted, that, as you said, I think have a runway, and we run out of runway at a certain point. And that has fed into the statistic that we started this chat about with the Menopause Foundation of Canada and folks that are leaving the workplace. And if menopause is the word or the topic or the movement of the day that's going to get us to have these conversations, I think that's great. Absolutely.
Yes. And you also are right in that everyone needs to be involved in those conversations.
Yes.
Yes. This is
Yes.
not a conversation just for perimenopausal women. I do a lot of work with teaching locals
Okay, cool.
and teaching unions. So it's a really good demographic for it. It's also a place where we can start talking about policy because they can advocate in collective bargaining. So it's a really exciting place to work. And a couple of weeks ago, a coordinator had reached out, asked me to come and do a women's retreat, be a keynote for a women's retreat. I said yes. They came back and said, actually, we're getting pushback about you because not everybody thinks that menopause is a conversation for them. And I felt rage at first about it, to be quite honest. And then I quickly moved into empathy because
Right.
when we have been sold the story that our value is wrapped up in fertility and how we look and all of those things, it isn't motivating necessarily to have this conversation. But what I wrote back about was why this is absolutely a conversation for everyone to have. And the truth is, like what you were saying, what we do to support to support ourselves in perimenopause and menopause is just good practice and the earlier we develop those strategies, the better it is when we reach this time. And
Yes.
communication, the way we communicate. And I'm wondering how do you work with organizations to help them with the communication part around this?
Oh, I'm such a word nerd, and I'm sure that I really get under people's skin. But I am violently against all of the negativity that is so baked into this conversation. And and I want to be, a stronger translator for those folks that might have been pushing back on your session, because menopause is not a diagnosis, neither is puberty. They're just at opposite ends of the hormone teeter-totter. And it is also an incredible opportunity and a chance to invest. And we can interpret opportunity in so many different ways. One of which is like, how do we harness all of that energy that is no longer in a family caregiving role, or that is no longer in even a monthly cycle, right? And like that happened for me. It was like all this kind of freedom opened up. But also, as an employer, what is our responsibility as leaders of organizations, associations, unions, workplaces, businesses, to say we have a role to play in turning down future rates of women's cardiovascular disease? We have a role to play in turning down future rates of osteoporosis. I know that bone health is not sexy to most leadership people. They're not laying awake at night or sitting around the boardroom talking about osteoporosis. But if I fall and break a hip and my adult children have to take time off work to come and look after me, and I am then a burden on the healthcare system, my own care team, my physiotherapist. Maybe I get dementia. Maybe I'm put on a wait list for long-term care. On and on and on it goes. And we're not having those types of conversations as business leaders or employers. And we have to.
This really clearly demonstrates how this is intergenerational.
Yes.
Yes. Yeah. This is not isolated to just this one human because whatever we experience impacts the community around us.
Totally. And
Yeah.
most of my community, Lisa, to be honest, looks at, and I'll stay in the osteoporosis lane for a second, as being unlucky. They look at a statistic of 1 in 3 women will fall and break a bone due to osteoporosis. And it's like, wow, that would make that person really unlucky if they were the 1 in 3. And I'm like, it's not luck.
It's not that.
Once we understand that estrogen plays a role in bone health, and I'm on a tangent right now, but I think it's really an important one. Once we understand that, and we understand that we have a role to play in preventing it, the same way we plan for retirement or plan for our kids post-secondary, we have a bone health account. And this is the invitation. So come on down to the lunchroom at 12 o'clock and learn how to invest in your future bone health.
I love
Gotta
that.
find a way to make that sexy.
Yeah.
I feel the same way about vaginal health and
Yes.
genitourinary health too, and mental health.
Yes. And all of the elements that, like we were saying, these are good practices that are foundational and are good for organizations, full stop, right?
For
It's not
sure.
just here. And one of the things I talk about in terms of communication is how we talk to each other, right? And actually putting ourselves at the center. So, one of the communication models I talk about actually came out of the Ontario full day kindergarten curriculum.
Mm,
And it was knowing and naming, acknowledging, and then telling.
just got a little goosebump. That's amazing.
Yeah. So instead of doing the thing that we do and just power through, and we all know what happens when we do that, right? It doesn't ever actually lead us anywhere good for ourselves or the organization. That we can stop and know and name and say what's happening, ask for the help that we might need on that day. And then that opens up conversation not only for ourselves, it's actually a really powerful leadership model.
I think that's beautiful, and you're my new best friend. I love it. I love it because I spend all day, every day, telling people that they need to get a Post-it note and write, "I deserve to feel amazing." But
Yes.
there's such a leap in that. And I used to underscore the word amazing all the time. And then just a few weeks ago, I realized I'm underscoring the wrong word. It's deserve that needs to be emphasized. We're trying to unwrite a message that we got that said we either don't deserve quality health care or being a woman comes with suffering. And unpacking that takes a little bit more than a post-it note, but this is a good place to start.
It is a good place to start. And I'm really grateful that you brought that up because you're absolutely right. Like, I feel that right in my soul that we were taught that our value was in service and that everything was service. And so to think this is a thing I struggle with every single day.
Yeah.
To think that I am worthy of receiving, it feels like surrender in the not good way.
Yeah.
And
And so at a micro level, like I receive so many posts in the Menopause Chicks community, and I don't even know how many of them. I can't put a number to it because it's too high. But folks will write in and they'll be like, I'm experiencing blank and blank and blank and blank, which are all disruptive to quality of life, right? Things that are equal pain and suffering. And then, do you know what the very next question is? Is this normal, Mark? And I will not put women's suffering and normal in the same sentence. So I don't use the word normal, but other people do. It's almost like we've been fed right from, years ago there was a dad on the internet who got all of this applause for giving his daughter Midol when she got her period. And I was like, okay, I understand the good intention in that gesture, but what message does that send a 12-year-old girl? Expect pain and suffering.
yeah. This morning I had Sandra Peltier on the show,
Yeah.
and we had this conversation around how actually with every rite of passage as a girl, it is a message of accepting discomfort.
Wow.
When you think about everything we experience, this, our first period, just, yeah, it's going to be uncomfortable. Just take this pill, just put a tampon up. I know it's weird and scary, but just do it. Wearing a bra, high-heeled shoes, putting on makeup. It's this constant reminder with every new milestone we hit that our set point is uncomfortable.
So true. So true.
And so unwinding that to actually, we deserve to be comfortable in our own skin is a really big process of unwinding all of that.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. And so many of us, myself included, went through some of those milestones of growing up, and we weren't fully informed or confident going into any of them. So, one example is yes, I did learn how to, a baby was made, and I did learn how not to make a baby. And then I was very fortunate that I made two. And but when I arrived to deliver those babies, had probably never used the word vulva. I had probably never heard the word pelvic floor. I certainly didn't know what a pelvic floor physiotherapist was. And I was also part of the generation, and God, I hope this has changed, where it's like it takes 6 weeks and then you're back. Your body's back. You're postpartum for 6 weeks. No, I'm postpartum for the rest of my life. So a lot of language is still up to keep us in work
Yeah.
and on our toes for the
Oh
next little while.
gosh. Yeah, absolutely. One of the other things that I'm starting to be curious about as well, which is actually counts as another lesson from Beverly Hills 90210, season 1, is that, and forgive me because I'm kind of just putting these pieces together, but at the root of so much of that, right, of not using language, of not talking about it, of not accepting it, it is fear.
Mm-hmm.
Fear and shame on lots of levels. And our generation in particular, and quite honestly, I had forgotten it because there's so much distance between it, but we were marinated in so much fear around sex because of HIV and AIDS. It still remains a really important conversation. And where it came from now is because they were having a high school assembly where a woman came and talked about her experience with
Wow.
having HIV and AIDS. And I went, right. I lived with so much fear around that. And I think it is part of that experience we had with sexuality that there was so much fear that we just pushed it away and kept it very quiet.
I agree. I agree.
Yeah, on so many levels. So, as we are wrapping up this conversation, what is the number one thing you want women to walk away from their time in your community and time with you, knowing and feeling and believing?
Well, number one is that they deserve to feel amazing. And close second to that is that they deserve to understand or to have the information translated for them, with them, so that they feel empowered to make the health decisions. It's a key shift. I love that we've been able to talk about generational shifts today. So thank you for that. But in the medical world, right? If I went to my accountant, I wouldn't say my accountant prescribed me X or my lawyer prescribed me X. But in the medical world, we haven't yet shifted to the fact that we are at the center of the health wheel and we get to make the decisions. But we're inviting well-educated, well-experienced, well-informed experts to help us with those decisions.
Thank you. That's such an important, again, framework to really think about that you are the center.
You are the center.
Yes, that's the perfect way to leave people in this conversation. Shirley, thank you so much for your time and your wisdom today. I've so enjoyed this conversation.
I loved connecting with you. Thank you so much.
And all of the information for how to connect with Shirley and the Menopause Chicks community will be in the show notes, so make sure you check that out. It's a really valuable community. Thank you for hanging out with me on Transforming 45. If you laughed, nodded, or had an oh wow moment, hit follow and share it with your favorite midlife human. Find me on Instagram @lboat and keep those transformations coming.